Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans ce nouvel épisode du Digital Download. Oops. Good afternoon, good morning, and good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to a new edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we'll explore effective leadership strategies for today's dynamic business environment. We will discuss how to build high-performing teams, foster innovation, and navigate the complexities of modern leadership with our special guest, Gregory Garrison. As a seasoned leader, author, lecturer, and speaker with 35 years experience as CTO, CIO, and director of 3 innovation labs, Greg specializes in digital transformation, IT strategy, and change management. But before we bring Gregory on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. Actually, it's going to be the 3 of us today. So while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. So, Tim, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you, Bertrand. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. I'm going to do Greg's advert for him before he comes on. Greg has written not 1, but 2 really great books called Lead, Finding Your Leadership Identity and Developing Your Leadership Style, which is the second part. The story is he wrote the whole thing and it was too big to put out as 1 book, so they split it into 2. But and you can get these at good bookshops or on Amazon. I'm really pleased and honored to have Greg on. So thank you very much.
So am I, myself, Bertrand Godillot. I am the founder and managing partner of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner. So as I said this week, on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Gregory Garrison. His extensive experience and insights offers valuable perspectives and developing leadership skills, driving innovation, and creating successful teams. Let's bring him on.
Oops. Hi, Greg.
Hi.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Good morning.
Hi, Greg. Good morning for you, and welcome. Greg, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and how you and what led you to where you are today.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, both of you, for the opportunity to Tim, to see you again, and also to be here, Bertrand, on your podcast today. And really appreciate the fact that we have the opportunity to talk about leadership, particularly in these challenging times. My background really is quite varied, and it's been an interesting ride thus far. I've had the opportunity to work internationally for 40 years. Worked, of course, in America. Then I went to Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore a couple of times, the UK and Spain. And I mention that because this has been part of the journey for me, working with teams, not only working with different cultures, but also working in different organizations. I've worked in many different industries, both as a line manager and as a consultant. And I think those have really assisted me in my leadership journey, and particularly in my growth as in continuing education and continuing development. So as a strategy consultant, as a line manager, CIO, CTO, and operations and development manager, really, I think I've worked the continuum of leadership all the way from strategy down to keeping the lights on. And that's what I want to share with you today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, Greg, the title of this show, of this panel discussion, is Stop Managing and Start Leading. Tell us more. Why do you say that?
Well, that's an interesting topic for us today, and because we are really in the throes of two different major transformations, and this is going to impact all of us in leadership and management dramatically, and has been for the last 5 years. The first dramatic change has been, of course, as we all experienced, the COVID incident, as well as the lockdowns. And what that has done to business, as we all experienced dramatically, was the fact that we moved from being on premise to being remote, working from home, and so on. And what that really did was that disrupted certainly the leadership, but primarily the management function within organizations. One moment we're managing by walking around, we're nurturing and motivating, developing our staff. The next moment, we're remote. So we moved from this synchronous situation to an asynchronous situation. And what that did, as we all know, that really collapsed our systems. It disrupted our operations, and particularly it threw into this asynchronous mode many of the business processes. And that has been, we've dealt with many of the business processes, but we haven't dealt with many of the management-based activities that occurred when we moved from this synchronous to this asynchronous behaviors. The next thing that is happening to us is, of course, the AI revolution. The AI revolution is going to be equally or more disruptive for management and leadership. And the reason I mentioned that is that if we look at leadership and management, sometimes people say this is flip sides of the same coin. Well, that is true. However, I also view this as a continuum. If we look at strategy and we look at visioning and then organizational development and developing of teams and motivating and nurturing teams, then on to people management, operations, and controls and keeping the lights on, that continuum from leadership to management really is going to be dramatically impacted by the fact that in this asynchronous working from home and hybrid working, many of the functions that we're currently performing are going to have to be conducted and performed remotely. Now, as we look at this over the next 5 to 10 years, what I'm convinced is going to happen is most of, if not all of the management activities are really going to be disintermediated by AI. And so the control functions, the project management functions, the all of the work assignment discussions and performance discussions and appraisals and so on, many of these things are going to be taken over by AI. Consequently, I would argue, and the reason I say stop managing and start leading is that I believe that the existing management functions that will be disintermediated by AI leave us primarily with the people management activities. And those people management activities are going to need to be enhanced. And as they are enhanced, they're going to move much more toward the leadership function. So I almost see what's going to happen in 10 years. And if I was talking to a young person under 45 or under 50, I would advise them management is really going to be disintermediated, and those people management functions that exist currently within the management role are going to move into the leadership area. So management really in a decade disappears and leadership becomes ever more important.
Do you know, Greg, I agree with you. And I was at Salesforce on Wednesday. And Salesforce have created in effect what you're saying, which is that they've got, if people want to look at it, they've got this AI agent. So what you can do is you can go into the CRM and you say, I'm going to a meeting next week. I'm going to need to negotiate. Can you help me with my negotiation skills? And what happens is this agent will basically ask you questions and then assess you in terms of the answers and coach you. So that's already available. The thing is that when it does that, it sends a note to your line manager saying that you've actually done this. So I was talking to both the line manager and one of the teams that we've coached there, and she said, I get this note saying you need to talk to Murray about, and so the typical coaching that somebody would have got from a manager is being taken place by the AI, but the leader is aware of it, is then having a different discussion, because it's not about, I don't have to sit there and say, let's role play the meeting that you're going to have. It can be more from a leadership perspective. So yes, and this is not future. This is happening now.
Yeah, and I think when we look at the tactical or administrative sorts of functions of management, those are naturals, particularly in the fact that we're now in this remote working or hybrid working environment. And so the problem, again, to elaborate on this, is the synchronous versus asynchronous behavior. And the manager is not in a position any longer to do that day-to-day management. But however, the AI agent is always on, ubiquitous, 24/7, knows you very well, and is constantly available as an assistant. And consequently, it will do an even better job at the administrative and tactical functions than any manager could do, even on premise. Now, one of the other interesting things that happens then, though, in that environment, in that explosive, dynamic, hyper-growth environment, is there are significant changes for leadership as well. And I've been working a lot. I'm writing a novel, and I'm working a lot with my assistant, AI, and doing the work of what would have been about 5 other research assistants, and now. But the thing is that in this dynamic world, an increasing function, I think, beyond the typical leadership functions, are what I'm calling steering the ship, because it's no longer about thinking of a vision and setting a strategic plan and creating an organizational structure, and all of these are important, motivating the teams. But in addition to that, things are moving so fast. You need to be in the moment, on top of things, grabbing the tiller or the wheel and steering the ship, because it is moving too fast to actually just sit back and set a strategic plan, hand over a series of project plans and work assignments, expect people to deliver that, and then come back and find out that things have moved on. So I think this the impact on is disintermediation of management, but also significant enabling and acceleration of the requirement for leadership.
Right. So we talked about management and leadership being two sides of the same coin, and as you said, and as you envisage it a continuum. And we also talked about the fact that we've moved from synchronous to asynchronous. What are the key considerations for leading remote hybrid teams in the modern workspace from your perspective, Greg?
Well, as always in leadership, I think the important thing is the leader needs to set a compelling vision. And that vision should be a stretch goal, a stretch vision, something that is ideally a game changer to move the organization forward. When you do that, you need to make sure that you take that vision and you translate that into a compelling purpose. And what you need to try and do is try and identify a purpose that either aligns with the team and the individual's altruistic desires or interests or career development activities and so on. So start with your vision, then create a compelling purpose that aligns the staff members' goals and objectives. Then be very clear about the deliverables. And it's not just about, particularly in the remote environment, it's not just about what are the tasks that need to be carried out. You need to empower the teams, and this is critically important in the remote and the hybrid environment. Empower them to take charge, because you can't be overseeing them all the time. And in empowering them to take charge, then making sure that they have the tools, the support tools, and the activities. But you're really looking for outcomes rather than deliveries of individual tasks along the way. Next thing is create a safe space for them. Make sure that they, a safe base, and make sure that they are confident and comfortable, and particularly around innovation and trying and delivering new things. And if they have that safe base and that safe place, then they will be more, they'll create a sense of trust and collaboration. And so there's, and then constant communication, constant collaboration, constant keeping them in the loop about what's happening in the wider organization.
And Greg, can you give us an example of that?
Well,
when you worked at TUI,
yeah.
When you worked at TUI, what did you say to your team?
Well, two things, and yes, back to the purpose, and we talked about this once before. Back to the purposes, you need to have everyone wants to be part of something bigger than themselves, and everybody wants to be part of something that has value. And it sounds simple, but it was very powerful at TUI. I used to tell in interviews and in onboarding, I used to say to people, everything we do, whether you're writing a piece of code, whether you are debugging a line of code, whether you're doing an Excel spreadsheet, creating a presentation, everything you are doing is about creating a value chain that ends up with a little family with a young child playing on a beach somewhere in Mallorca, for example. And this vision of the fact that these weren't just tactical activities. It wasn't just a line of code. It wasn't just an Excel spreadsheet, but we were creating something that had true value to our customers. That's one thing. So I think creating a vision with a purpose is very important. The other thing is I had teams and IT teams in 53 countries, and small teams in some of these places, but nevertheless, it was a very distributed environment. And all of these people needed to feel like they were part of a larger organization. They were part of a cohesive team that had a vision, that had a culture, that had a purpose. And so the constant communication was critical in whether someone was in the Dominican Republic or whether they were in Mauritius. You had to make sure that these people felt not disenfranchised and not distant, but part of a living, breathing, dynamic organization. And so that's where regular communications, simple communications, and as we know, something that may seem minor to ourselves as a leader can be very important to them. Another thing I used to do, I used to walk into the office, and we had about 60 or 70 people in the office. And I would go the long way around, and I would walk through all of the teams and make eye contact with virtually everybody as I walked in. And it was a small thing, but then I would say good morning to each of the groups. And somehow this small little activity of engaging with them was critically important. And that's the same as if when you're in a meeting, making, smiling at someone or nodding or a quick, hey, great idea, or these small little activities, small little comments may seem trivial to you, but these are really important to reinforce and encourage the staff and give them, a purpose and hope and expectations of a collaborative environment where they are part of the team.
We have a comment from the audience in high flow. The ships today are bigger and move faster. It takes more than one person to set a plan, execute, and manage all the micro adjustments that happen as the world changes. I think leaders today must share steering the ship. The way they can do this is through leadership, because I have the complete text here. Any comments on that, Greg?
Well, what you're talking about there is empowerment, and I think that's exactly right. I think the leader, I know the leader needs to set the vision. You need a single version of the truth. You need, a single direction. But as we know, using the metaphor, the analogy of sailing, you've got to move with the wind and the waves, and consequently, be dynamic and adaptive as you go along. And the thing is that the manager in their ivory tower, wherever it is, even if it's a small office, they are not in touch with all of the activities in all of the departments in all the countries around the globe. Consequently, exactly right. You've got to empower your teams, particularly in the remote and the hybrid environment. You've got to empower your teams to, one, have the confidence that they can help steer, two, have the tools that they need, and three, that they know that they are empowered and enabled to do so. So I recall one time, it was an interesting example. I had a large team, and I was doing one of these outward bound type team development exercises. And we were building rafts and building towers, and I had hired an external consultant to run this. And so everything was going very well. The first day it was terrific. The second day would come along, and all of a sudden, the consultant pulls me out of the organization. And he said, just sit here and observe. And all of a sudden, the teams began to flounder, and they began to fail in the activities. And I said, oh, I better get back in and help steer the ship. And he said, no. He says, that's the problem. You have created a dependency on your leadership style. He said, you're not going to retire here. You've got to develop these people, empower them, enable them, encourage them, and ensure that they are capable of making decisions and building the raft and building the tower themselves. So this was an eye-opener for me. And when I got back to the office, then I appointed 4 new directors within the organization. And he says, you have to let the people grow. You have to let the people develop. You've got to let the people fail, and you've got to take the risk. Because all of a sudden, just as the observers said, the leader sets the vision, but you may have many ships afloat at the same time, and consequently, that empowerment and team development, and that's another thing that is critically important in the remote environment. Is in addition to the vision and the purpose, is making the people feel as if they are growing and they are developing, and that's one of the true motivators for people, not just delivery of the objectives, but the fact that they are self-actualizing, they're growing and developing as well, and then as a result, the tide raises all ships, and everybody develops and everybody grows.
I'd like to come back to the start of our discussion, Greg, where you said basically we're experiencing the impact, the massive impact, the dramatic impact, as you called it, of 2 major changes. And I'd like to understand what are the effective strategies to drive change for leaders and ensure a smooth transition, if it's possible?
Well, I think, again, that's part of the leader's responsibility, is to do the horizon scanning, to watch the market, to be involved in the industry forums, to understand where things are moving. And when I used to run the innovation labs, and we were working as futurists and trying to understand where things were going. And I remember that particularly when I was at AOL and we were developing mobiles in the early days, we were looking 3, 4, 5 generations. Well, not that far, but we were looking 2 or 3 generations of mobile phones out and understanding what was the future evolution. And a very interesting story. In the early days, and this was back in the WAP phones and 0.5G and so on. Some of you guys will remember this. I went in at one point into the board and said to the board, we need this investment. We need these teams to develop the WAP phone. And so I put forward a multi-million-dollar investment, and which was approved. And then I said, okay, for the second part of the presentation, I'd like to request that we do not launch this product. And they said, when? And I said, never. They said, what are you talking about? We just approved this project to develop this multi-million-dollar investment. And now you're saying we're never going to launch this? And I said, no, we're not. Because here are the usability tests that show that this experience is unacceptable, that this is going to cannibalize our brand. This is going to hurt us more than it's going to help us. But we need to be on the journey. We need to develop the content serving. We need to develop the legal. We need to develop the devices. We need to develop the relationships. And because then the next generation, 3G, will be coming right on the back of that. And so amazingly, they approved this. And what we did was we developed this initial version. And this initial version was the platform we needed to launch the next version. And everyone else is sitting around waiting until the next version. So we're there on day one when the new version is ready, and we launch, rather than sitting back and waiting for things to catch up with themselves. Another thing, as I said, we need to be participating as a global player in all of these industry forums, so that we can help develop the standards, rather than have to run to catch up to comply with the standards. So this is about visioning, and this is about making sure that that your role is on the right trajectory, considering all the different market, customer, internal activities, and competition. Now, once you've got that, then you've got the teams that say, okay, yes, this is the target, this is the direction, but everyone else then needs to help bring us along to accomplish that journey.
Greg, there are many things I like about your books. One of the things is that you're very honest about some of the presentations that you give. There's a lot of case studies, and that you're very honest about some of the presentations you give, which is, I think, is refreshing, because it's refreshing in terms of that not all presentations you give to boards go well.
Oh, I know where you're going.
But the thing is that you, at least in the book, you're very honest about it, and I think that not all of us have had experience of presenting to boards, and actually you sharing that experience, I think, is a not just great case studies, but great experience and learning for people. Would you like to share, while I'm on the subject, would you like to share a story about when you presented to a board and it didn't go very well?
Well, it went very well up to a moment. And so what we were doing, this is in the old days of investment bank trading systems. the early days of the explosion of derivative products. And also this was in the middle to late 90s, where the internet was just taking over. And so this organization had the almost the monopoly, the dominant role in investment bank trading. But what had happened is that the systems were proliferating. There was new markets coming on board every day, and so we needed a new generation of products. One day I was flying back from Hong Kong, and I was sitting up in the upper deck of a 747 watching the pilots, and looking at their displays, and I got this idea that the investment bank trading environment was a very dynamic environment, but these tools and controls were highly optimized for their purposes. So this gave me the idea that we should model our investment bank trading systems, first of all, to be consistent, easy to use, but to be optimized for their environment, and also to be internet-based. So I came into the office one day and I said, everybody, 80 people, tools down. We are now everything we do from this moment forward is going to be internet-based. And they all rallied around this model, and we developed a prototype, high-performance prototype of the new investment bank trading system on the internet, which nobody had at the time. So I walk into the board for investment in this and show them the prototype, and dramatically explain that this is the way forward, and we need an investment in this area, and everybody's excited. And then I got carried away, and I said, this is what's going to happen, and this is the way we're going to kill the competition. We're going to kill Knight Ridder. We're going to kill Bloomberg. We're going to, this is the way forward. And not only that, we're going to kill the old Reuters. Sorry. I shouldn't have mentioned the name of the company. They were the dominant player.
We're editing out, Greg, don't we?
Thank you very much. And then all of a sudden, this booming voice from the back of the boardroom table says, "Kill the old Reuters. What are you talking about? We are the dominant player in the marketplace." And what I had neglected to do, and it's an important learning point, if you look at transformational change, is you've got to ensure that you bring the people and the leadership and the collaborators along with you on the journey. So I was summarily packed up and dismissed from the boardroom, but it was a critical learning point for me. It's not just about having a great idea. It's not just about building and prototyping is a great idea. You've got to bring the team along with you on the journey. And that was what I had neglected to do. And that was a major failure on my part. And so in the book, I talk about Cotter and Rosabeth Moss-Cantor and different people who are experts in the field of business transformation. And one of the key things is making sure that you 360 degrees bring everybody along on the journey with you.
We have a comment from the audience, and so it's Tony saying, "I find this very interesting, but looking around the screen, there's a lot of gray hairs." By the way, not all of us have gray hairs, Tony. But the question is, do Gen Z see the sense of what Greg is talking about, is explaining, basically? That's a fair question.
Well, it's a good question for Gen Zs, but one of the interesting things for me is to watch my sons. Obviously, I have managed dozens, if not hundreds, of young people, and brought those young people on the journey with me, and that's critically important. But I watch my sons, and I see one son has been at Google for 20 years, another son was at Google and now is at an AI startup. And I see we have regular conversations, and clearly the issues around leadership and the issues around remote working are all things not only have I discussed with them, but they have contributed to this. But I think the answer is yes. If we are talking about a vision with a purpose, if we are talking about strategic alignment, if we are talking about empowering and enabling team members, giving them a secure base, a safe base, involving them and in not only in operations, but in strategy, empowering them. I believe, and this has been validated by many, many successful leadership journeys that I've been on, that those things are universal. Yes, the technologies are always going to change, and this is critical. One thing I learned in running usability labs and as a futurist is that even the latest, greatest technology eventually will be obsolete. And so you've got to, continue to stay on the journey, continue to accelerate, continue to steer the ship. But I would contend that some of these things are about human nature, and human nature is not going to change all that much, even with the COVID lockdowns and with the AI disruptive and new technologies.
I agree, Greg, and I also understand from Tony's comment that I totally understand that there may be a Gen Z person may look into this podcast and look at this and say there's nothing for me because I don't see anybody like me. That said, I totally agree with you that leadership has changed, and Flo kind of said this as well, which is that if you pick up a leadership book from 20 years ago, it was very different from what leadership is today. And leadership is about, you talked about, Gen Z, they want to work in impact. They want to have a purpose. They want to be empowered. That all of those things I think are really important, more so than any other time.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to comment on, because maybe so I think we're in a very safe place to talk about this, because we probably have accepted or could have accepted our generation to work without purpose.
Yeah.
And it's
I remember when I was
no longer the case. So
I remember when I was in my 20s, a good friend of mine told me he just had a meeting with his manager, and his manager said, "Your job is to buckle down and do what I tell you to do."
Yeah.
Well, I think this is an important point, because you said that management has changed and leadership has changed. If we look back to the old days of the command and control systems, the Frederick Taylor sorts of things, where it was top down. Yes, that has definitely changed. And certainly I think the remote working has forced some changes there, to where it's really forced the issue of team empowerment. So that, and as the comment from the other person, there's multiple people that have to steer. And that is right. I think and it's the same example that I gave, where in the offsite, where I was leading and directing the team, and when I jumped out of the team, all of a sudden they floundered. And so it was critical that I empowered the next layer of management. So I think that is a very good point, that the command and control structure is definitely dead and buried, and certainly with the evolution of AI over time, to where you can't be all things to all people in all places. And so you need to bring that team along with you. And fortunately, I hired, particularly in the innovation labs and things, I hired a number of just, world experts in ergonomics and human factors and design and so on. People who in their own domains, every one of them knew more than I did about their particular context and their particular technology. But someone had to tell them where we were headed. But I always prided myself in being able to find and select excellent people. And that was a function of the success that we had by, one, getting good people. And by the way, also, make sure you really develop your internal people as well. And I think that's critically important. They have the domain expertise, and many of them have been glass ceilinged by previous management. So develop your internal people, hire excellent people, and empower them, and don't feel like you have to be all things to all people. And it brings up decision making. There's a Daniel Kahneman was a Nobel Prize winning economist, but also wrote a book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. And this is a good example about decision making. So that if you have the knowledge and the expertise and the training and the background, then you can rapidly assess situations and make a quick decision. However, if it's out of your area of expertise, or if you have other people that have better knowledge and experience in the area, that's when you need to stand back. You do your research, decide, should I make the decision? Should I delegate the decision? And do we need to research and plan and make an alternative decision? So very important that leadership is confident enough to share the wealth, confident enough to share the leadership, and take advantage of the quality of the people around you, and particularly over time. If you manage people for a decade or more, people will develop over time, and where they were junior before, all of a sudden they become more senior and more capable. And then you've got to make sure you don't consider them, as they always were, just a newbie, and recognize their development and push them out there.
Okay, so what type of advice would you give to emerging leaders, who are looking to develop their leadership style, and probably make a significant impact at the same time?
Well, just as a preamble to that, leadership and management are always contextual. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on the type of industry you are in. And for me, part of my journey has been working in different types of organizations. One, have confidence in your instinct, have confidence in yourself, and develop your capabilities of horizon scanning, researching, and continuous development. To the extent, and then when you get into an organization, make sure that the organization is an organization that aligns with your internal value system and your vision and your purpose in life. And if you are constantly growing, constantly developing, constantly growing and educating yourself, which I had to do continuously throughout my career, then make sure that you're very careful in the types of roles and the types of organizations that you join. And because culture is a unique thing, and the cultures can either be virtuous or not, and or vicious. And so one, I think very importantly, is recognize that management is disintermediating and being taken over. And I would argue if someone was thinking about going into management over the next decade, don't. Consider the fact that these tactical administrative activities are going to be taken over by tools. And so you need to be a person who's going to set the vision, nurture the teams, have empathy, guide the teams, and grow the teams. So I don't know if that answered the question, but it's partially about your own personal development, but it's also about your personal development and your value system in alignment with your organizations and your teams.
And we have a comment, I think, which goes into that direction from Patrick from Canada, by the way. Hi, Patrick. Great management knows when to turn the lead role over to the best person to represent the team on a situational basis. It is often hard to get people to admit what they are great at. Any comments on this?
Yeah. That's a great comment, and that comes back to the whole issue around team leadership and developing a good team, hiring a good team, developing trust and confidence in your people, because nobody's, again, all things to all people, and there were many times when I had experts, and particularly as I went to new organizations, there were people that knew much more about the organizations than I did. Fortunately, I was confident enough in my own person and my own leadership capability, knowing what my role was, to share the leadership with my management team. And I remember at one point I had about 7 or 8 really strong, this was at TUI, really strong directors. And each one of them were leaders, not only of their own teams, but they were a part of the leadership team. And so it's not just the leader, it's the leadership team that you develop, as well as the specialist experts within the organization. And so at the end of the day, you want to achieve your objectives. 2, you want to have a team that is dynamic and self-supporting. And just for a moment, I remember there's a British poet, and David White. And David White talks about the fact that true friends are few and far between, but friends of the road are very important. And he gives the analogies of, if you're in the mountains of Afghanistan in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm, so you're very grateful for your friends of the road who are watching your back, with you on the journey to the fire and protecting you from the element. I think that's part of the whole idea of a team that pulls together. And the team will only pull together if they, 1, feel they have a safe base, 2, if they have trust, 3, if there's a value exchange between you and the employees, and 4, if they're growing and developing. And so there were many times when myself, my leadership team, and the organization, we just had a heck of a lot of fun doing exciting things together, accomplishing things together. And yes, we had trials and tribulations. There's an example I give in the book. One time we spent many months with a major release. And on the weekend, we had to launch this release. And by Sunday afternoon, the thing had failed. And we were sorely disappointed and had to regroup, and it was going to mean many weeks or months of additional work. So I walked in the office on Monday morning, and everybody is somber and downtrodden. And I walk in, smile on my face as usual, and say, "Nobody died, did they?" And everybody bursts out laughing. No. I said, "Okay, well, in 6 months or 6 years, we won't even remember this happened. Let's just deal with it. We'll get on with it. Nothing earth-shaking happened." And I think it's very important to have a little bit of humor, but also to be encouraging rather than punitive. Because at the end of the day, if I'd have walked in and said, "What the hell happened? You got to be kidding me. This costs us thousands of pounds or euros or dollars," that would have been very disruptive and detrimental to the process of fixing and delivering a new successful release.
So, Greg, we've got about 6 minutes
you.
left, and there's 2 really good questions that have come in. So there's Jeffrey Weiss, which basically says, "Are leaders as transferable as we treat them today?"
Very good point. Perhaps. I'm going to qualify this. So I worked for many years in 5 different countries. I worked in financial services. I worked in sports. I worked in banking. I worked in media. I worked in mobiles and broadband and so on. And I would argue that many of my team building and leadership skills were transferable because of the fact, and why? Because I was guiding teams, helping teams, encouraging teams, empowering teams. But the people with the knowledge about the organization, the deep knowledge of the organization, were the people in my teams, my directors, my managers, my employees, and so on. So leadership, I think, and again, it goes back to the issue of thinking slow and thinking fast. If knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know, and it's not about faking it until you make it. It's about growing and developing. And I was constantly in every job, I would have to be involved in rapid continuous development. And so, yes, I think leadership skills are absolutely transferable into almost any context.
And I'm going to cut across you because I want to get Patrick Tinner's
absolutely. But
which is Greg. What was the most important lesson your mentor or mentors instilled in you? And you've got 2 minutes.
Tragically, I never had a mentor. And this was perhaps a good thing, in that not having a mentor is I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps in every different environment, in every different country, and in every different role. What I have done as a mentor is, I think, one, provided opportunity for my people, believing in them, encouraging them, picking them up, supporting them. When something went wrong, encouraging them of what they, have done right and why they are capable and why they can rise to the occasion. So I think as a mentor myself, developing and growing and believing in people and trusting people. And trust is a value exchange, one that they know that you have their back, and you know that you have their support.
So Bertrand's got his "I need to close the show" face on.
Yes, exactly.
I know what he looks
like.
That
was really great.
Thank
Greg.
you so much, Greg.
Yeah. Where can people learn more? Where can we find you?
LinkedIn, Gregory H. Garrison, and on my website, gregonleadership.com.
And the 2 excellent books.
And don't forget, look at Gregory H. Garrison's books on Amazon. Lead, book 1 and book 2.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Always trying to do an advert for you, Greg.
Sorry, Greg, because this is for some reason in the wrong space. But we now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights. Beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists and to our guest, Greg Garrison, and to our audience, which was very participative today, great. Thank you all, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you very much.